Welcome or welcome back. I am your host, Alexus Mihkel, and these are my sober thoughts. If you are listening to this episode, yes, it has almost been an entire year since I have posted a podcast episode. This has been a very interesting year to navigate through. And when I stopped posting, it wasn't because there was like one particular thing that was going on or that I was like not motivated to post. It wasn't anything of the sort. It really had to do where I was spiritually. And I think it's hard for me to say this, but it's very honest and it's very true. As much as I've grown this year and as much as I've like learned more about myself, I've learned more about God and his capacity, and I've learned more. I've just learned a lot. It was probably almost the most depressing year I've ever had in my life. And that, that's kind of hard to say because I had so many like great moments this year. I had a lot of fun. But I think through the fun and through all the great moments, I was more depressed than I've ever been. And I don't think I felt this kind of depression since probably 2020. And today today was honestly one of the hardest days for me. Like I had a very emotional day. There's just a lot of things happening in my life emotionally. And today I was sitting and I was just like replaying everything that's been happening to me, around me. Um and just like I just was replaying the entire year and just asking myself like, okay, where did I go wrong? What some of the things I could have done better? Why am I ending the year like this? And how could I do better next year? Just kind of like, just processing the year. And as I was like navigating through my thoughts, something came up and I actually tweeted it. And I said to myself, like, when I stopped telling my story, things changed for me. I think one of my superpowers is my story. And I've always been told that I have like this amazing story, but from outside of being told, like I know that I have a very inspiring testimony. And I realized within the podcast, within just my social media, within everything that I have going on in my life, I stopped telling my story. I stopped giving my why. I stopped talking about why I am where I am today. I stopped talking about what I've gone through to get here. I've stopped talking about some of the traumatic events that happened in my life that kind of positioned me into doing the things that I want to do and become. I stopped talking about why I became sober. I stopped talking about, you know, why I just my why in general. And I've always told my clients and I've always told people around me why the why is so important. And it's like I lost the art of the why. And how did I notice I lost it is because I think I've gotten to this point in my life where some of the things I've been through have become so like past tense to the point where I think like I've created this I've created this reality that some of the things didn't happen. And it's not because I'm being delusional or I'm trying to tell myself it didn't happen, but I think I've pushed things so far back in my mind and I've tried to do what everybody used to tell me, which is like move on. And that's why you have to be careful with telling people to like move on and let go of things, because you have people like me who actually take that serious and like hearing move on, let it go, like move on, push forward, hearing that so much in my life, like it caused me to push things so far back in my memory to the point where I have no memory of it. And I think a lot of times with our bodies, when we get wounds and we go through things and we get scars from them, I think the beauty of scars is although they heal, it's the beauty of like looking at a scar and remembering like, hey, I know how you got there. And you healed so beautifully and I never thought you would look the way you look today. And so when I think about like everything that I've been through, I think I've pushed it so far like in the back of my mind that I forgot like, okay, hey, I remember you went through that and I remember you getting through that and I remember God healing you from that. And like look where we are today. Like I have this like crazy scar on my foot, on my left foot that I got when I was in 11th grade from riding a moped by myself and I really know how to ride it. And at the end of the night, not only did I like fracture my arm in like several different places, but I cut my foot so deep that the bone was showing, and I had to like get stitches, and I couldn't walk. I couldn't wear shoes for days. I was on like a crutch, and I had like a sling on my arm. It was like a lot. It was like a really traumatic moment. And obviously a valuable lesson was learned from that night. But like more importantly, the scar as I got older and like the scar healed, it shocked me how like how much it healed, and how like it went from this really big ugly scar that I didn't even want to look at without feeling embarrassed, to like looking at it and like, wow, I remember that night happened. It was so crazy. I learned so much, and I can't even believe that the scar healed that beautifully. And I think about this scar, and I've been looking at my scar quite some time, and I realize like that's how my spiritual wounds and like things that I've gone through, it should feel like that. It should feel like, hey, I'm not gonna act like you don't exist, and like I never got this scar. I'm not gonna act like I've never been heartbroken. I'm not gonna act like I've never been raped. I'm not gonna act like I've never been molested. I'm not gonna act like I've never been upset with my parents, or that I didn't have a traumatic relationship with my mom, or I didn't go through homelessness and all these different things. Like, I'm not going to act like this didn't happen. In fact, I'm going to remember that it happened. I'm going to embrace that it happened. And when I think about it, or when I look at those things, I'm going to remember the beauty in it. I'm going to remember like, hey, even though I went through that, I gained this from it, or I learned this. And so that's what I was like processing today. And I've been gathering ideas and all sorts of things, preparing for season 2 of Sober Thoughts. This has been kind of in the works for weeks. Of like returning and coming back and talking about, whatever I was going to talk about, and like what direction I wanted the season to go in. But as I like recently, the last couple of days, I sat with myself, and I actually had already started filming, some of the episodes, and just like getting an idea of what I want my niche to be, kind of like pinpointing and, integrating all the things I've been learning in school. We're going to talk about me, starting school, going back to get my theology degree, and wanting to get my doctorate in theology, and all this, or all the things. Like I said, there's been some good things that's happened this year, but at the same time, as I was like processing and navigating through planning for the podcast and all of that, like within the last 2 to 3 days, I sat and I thought to myself, like, you know what? I need to go back to the beginning. Like, I need to go back to the beginning. I need to tell my story. I need to be comfortable with telling my story again. I think I've gotten so uncomfortable with telling my story. Sometimes I have no choice but to remember I've been through something, and like saying it makes me feel so uncomfortable, and I feel so detached from that season of my life. And I don't want my pain, or some of these traumatic events, like I don't want them to feel like that. Although some pain is going to come with it, because those were painful times in my life, but I just don't want to feel like I can't even talk about some of the things that cultivated me to the person I am today. And so, like I said, I want to go back to the beginning, as we come back into Sober Thoughts, and as we gather and prepare for season 2. I think it would be really, really important for me to just stop and just take a moment to go back to the beginning and talk about who I am, how far I've come, why I've decided to start this podcast, why did I decide to become sober, why do I want to study theology, why did I get my life coach certification, I'm sorry, like why did I do some of these important things in my life, like um why do I feel the way I feel about relationships? Why do I feel the way I feel about spirituality? Like, why did I start taking my relationship with God serious? And like, I just want to go back to the root of it. Like, I want my audience to have a moment where we can connect and you guys just understand more about who I am, because I think I've gotten lost in the sauce. Like, I think I have forgotten who I am. And I think this year really, really showed me that. Like, it was crazy because at the top of the year, it was I'm not gonna lie, like it was incredible. Like, I fast, and from that fast I started working out, I started going to school. I just felt really good. I felt really like connected and anchored in the vision, in the mission. Like, I just felt like I was on the right track. And then obviously, as the months were going on and I started to like step back out into the real world, because I was like off of social media for months. I didn't have any social media. I wasn't posting anything. I wasn't going out with friends. Like, I was literally like, it was like very strict. Like, I had a really strict program. It was just like, wake up, pray, I'm fasting, I'm working out, I'm doing my homework or preparing for school. Um, And like that was like my routine. Like I was in bed before a certain time. I was waking up super duper early. Like I just had like I was isolated but in a healthy way. And once I started to integrate back into the real world, I didn't know who I wanted to show up as. Because it's like, yeah, I was excited about this person who I was becoming, but I think I started to have an identity crisis, especially when I started to like play with sin again and I started to like walk back into some of that sinful nature. And I just started to like forget in the midst of everything that was going on around me and like the environment that I was in and just within myself. I started to forget like who I was, like who God had called me to be in that season. And I felt it happening in real time, and I kept saying like it's okay, like everything's gonna be okay. I'm being hard on myself. Like I was trying to like justify what was happening, but at the same time the truth was like there. I felt the spirit constantly like warning me like, all right, like you're starting to play with fire, you're going to get burned. And I think as I am reflecting now at the end of the year, you know, I feel burned. I feel out of place. I feel like I've set myself back. I kind of feel I really feel regretful in a way. Like I said, there were some really good accomplishments this year, especially spiritually. I think I broke through a lot of bondage, but at the same time, I think the worst thing you can do is go backwards. And I think I've talked about this on the podcast. Like, the worst thing you can do is go backwards when God has sent you so, like, God has sent you so far forward and you decide to turn around, just like, you know what, let me just, like, you start missing your old life. You start missing some of the people. You start missing even some of the feelings you felt before. Like, you start missing, like, some of the things, and you think that you can kind of live, like, this double life. Like, you think you can still walk with God but still hold on to some of the things that kept you away from him in a way. And so as I sit and I reflect and I'm just like, I got away from myself. And I think a part of that was me trying to like get so far away from the broken version of myself that I just like completely like you it's so important to know your why and to remember your why. As hard as it is sometimes to think about some of the things that we've experienced, again, I'm going to say this time and time again, it's so important. So if you're somebody who has forgotten yourself, or if you're somebody who, you kind of push some of your trauma so far back in your mind to the point where you don't even remember some of the things you've experienced, and then all of a sudden one day you're walking down the street or you're having a conversation with someone and something just triggers you, like this episode is for you. Like, so we're gonna sit down and we're just gonna take like a memory lane. And I just want to give like a fair warning. I have a very hefty story. I have a very hefty testimony, and so it might be triggering. There's like conversations that's gonna come up that are very uncomfortable. There's gonna be topics that I'm gonna touch on that are very uncomfortable, but it is my story, and brace yourself though. It's my story, but brace yourself. Because to me, I'm going to say some things and I'm going to say it so calmly and I'm going to say it so naturally that I realize sometimes when I've told my story, I say stuff so calmly and naturally, and other people are like bawling. And they're looking at me like, how could you just talk about that at such a calm state? And again, it's because I've processed so many of these experiences for so long that I don't really have a lot of emotion tied to it anymore. But who knows? Who knows how this episode is going to play out, because I already feel very emotional. Sorry, I feel very emotional just coming, recording, and having to sit down and kind of go backwards. But I know that I need this for my soul. And I know that somebody else needs to be reminded that what you've been through is so important to your testimony. Like, the Bible doesn't just talk about all the accomplishment Jesus had. It doesn't just talk about all the good moments where he was healing and where he was, having enjoyable moments with his disciples. But it goes all the way to the beginning, and it talks about some of the struggles. It talks about them having to hide him because there was a king who wanted to kill all the boys just to find him. It talks about some things his mother had to go through, some of the things his parents had to go through, some of the hardships he had to endure during all of this process of becoming our savior. And so our testimony and our story is so important. If you read any narrative in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, when it talks about David, when it talks about Moses, like everybody has a story that doesn't always start off so good. Sometimes it's unbearable. Sometimes it's very painful to witness or to hear some of the things we've experienced to get to where we're going. But yeah, So I just want to start with the beginning. And I'm gonna take us back. I'm gonna take us as far as back as I can. But like I said, I'm Alexus Mihkel. And let's talk about that because one of the things I noticed this year is that people have gotten so comfortable with calling me Mihkel, which has made me so uncomfortable because yes, I was born Mihkel Alexis Reeves. A lot of people don't know that, but my I switched my name. And there's a lot of purpose to me switching my name. It's not about me trying to hide an identity or anything like that, but a lot of times in the Bible, God changed people's name. Like when they hit a certain point in their life, He changed their name. And a lot of times it was similar. And so for me, that's what my name change resembles. Like when I was younger, I used to literally want to permanently change my name. I wanted to drop my last name and just be Mihkel Alexis or Alexis Mihkel. But I've become okay with my last name. I've become like acceptable to it. Don't really trip about it because I know eventually, maybe someday I'm going to get married and it's going to drop anyways. But Alexis Mihkel is the person who endured a lot of things when she was younger, but she overcame them. She overcame them. She's resilient, she's strong, and she's like the mother of Michael. She's the one who took her and said, "Come on, I'm going to love you. I'm going to cater to you. I'm going to show you why all of this is worth it. I'm going to show you why everything you went through is so purposeful, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you this love that I'm receiving from God, and I'm going to pour it back into you." Right? So that's who I am. So me switching my name around and everybody calling me Michael is so triggering sometimes. Like I've gotten more, I used to correct people, but I've gotten like more comfortable with it and just like not saying anything. But I do not like when anyone calls me Michael. I feel like, especially when you have not been around me, like I get it. Even my mom respectfully calls me Alexis, or when she introduces me, she introduces me as Alexis because I don't know if she sees the discomfort or I don't know if she just gets it without having to know the details, but she's accepted that I've accepted the identity that I walk in. So even my mom calls me Alexis. So respectfully, just call me Alexis. But I do put the name together so that like that person is still a part of me. That little girl is still a part of me. She's not erased. It's not to erase her. That's why on all my social media or just when I introduce myself, it's Alexis Mihkel. I don't even say Alexis by itself. So just respectfully call me Alexis or Alexis Mihkel or Alex for short. But yeah, I don't like when people call me Mihkel, and I've noticed like a lot of people, once they hear like somebody from my past, like maybe my cousin or maybe like a long lost friend, when they hear them call me that, they feel so comfortable to call me that. And it's just like, wait a minute. That's not what I introduced myself as. But anyway, that was just, I'm rambling at this point. But anywho, I'm Alexis Mihkel. That's my name. That's who I present myself to be. And I was born and raised in California. I've been in California all my life. I have like moved outside of California. I've lived in Florida for a little bit. I moved to Wyoming for a scholarship when I was in the 8th grade for a month. I've lived in Vegas for a little bit. Like I've been places. Don't get me wrong, but for the most part, I'm from California. I've lived in California. I've lived all over California. I hate when people ask me where exactly in California am I from. Obviously LA, but I've lived all over LA, from Hollywood to Long Beach to Orange County to wherever cities. I've been in multiple cities and I've actually lived there. And that goes into just like my upbringing. My mother had me when she was 15 years old. My father was 21, 20. Um, it's just like, even within that was like a lot of trauma. My mom was a teenage parent. My dad was older. He already had a lot of kids. He was married. He had a lot going on. My mom had a lot going on. She had just lost her grandmother, which was like somebody who adopted her, took care of her all her life, gave her kind of the best childhood she could ever have. And to just have that all taken away from her and be pregnant at the same time was a lot for her. So my early years was very like traumatic. Like sometimes when I talk to one of my aunts who was obviously there for a lot of this, she always reminds me like, hey, the fact that you have like anxiety and all these things, it didn't come from anywhere. Because I think sometimes I like feel crazy because like I struggle a lot with like anxiety or like PTSD. And a lot of times I'm just like, why me? Like, why can't I be normal? Like, why do I feel this way? Why am I anxious all the time? Why do so many different things trigger me? And my aunt sometimes she has to remind me, like, you've been a very anxious child since you were young, like since you were a baby. You were a very like timid kid. Like your mom went through a stage of postpartum depression. You just had a lot of stuff going around you as a child that you may not remember, but it was always a lot of like chaos around you, emotionally and physically. So the fact that you're anxious, you have to come to terms with that comes from your upbringing, that comes from your childhood, way before you were even talking. And so I don't want you to feel like you're crazy, or you're like so different, or you're like the black sheep, because a lot of these things were out of your control, and a lot of these things you probably don't even remember happening. And so growing up, like I just lived in a very like chaotic environment. We moved around a lot. It was very hard for my mom to get stable. We lived with a lot of different people. So it was always just like being around different spirits, being around different atmospheres, and having to constantly change and adapt to these different atmospheres. That was a lot. That's a lot on any kid. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter how good of a parent you think that you are, but just like constantly changing environments, and a child having to adapt and readapt, constantly never being able to be comfortable as a child. It's a lot. It's a lot on their spirit. It's a lot on them physically and emotionally, especially because I realized as a child I was very distant. Like I like to be to myself a lot. It was really hard for me to make friends and keep friends. Um, I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I related to any of like my cousins or any of the children around me. I felt like I was so different. I felt like I was like an oddball because I didn't see anybody else have a teenage mom. I didn't see anybody else like living pillow from post. Like all the other kids around me had a different story. They were like being cultivated in a different environment. So for me, I just always felt like different. And you can kind of see how that plays a part in my adulthood. And also just being around so many different people and living from pillow to post is also like how a lot of my abuse was introduced to me. I think the first time I was like sexually abused, um, and it's so hard to even, at this time in my life, it's so hard to even pinpoint the first time because it started at such an early age. Like, of course, you had my cousin who was like touching on me. He was doing everything to me. He was touching me. He was bullying me. He was forcing me to do things I didn't like. He was very, very mean to me growing up. And he was it was just like he was like a very dark figure in my life. Um, so yeah. But on top of that, like I remember we had nannies. Like my mom, we had like really good nannies, and I had a really good nanny for a long time. And when we moved, or I don't really remember what took place, but we stopped going to my original nanny, and like my brother had got like a new nanny, and then obviously eventually they started to like be my nannies as well. But I just remember like she had a daughter that was like maybe like older, like maybe like 13, 14, 15 years old. And I remember her like taking me in the playhouse one time and like lifting her shirt up and showing me her boobs and like making me touch her boobs and just like weird stuff like that. And then obviously like just other people, other like family friends, I've talked about a lot of this before, especially on the podcast, just like touching me and sexually abusing me. Like a lot of that took place because there was no stability. And as I'm older, I realize how mentally unstable I can be. Um, I've gotten to a point where physically I know what stability looks like, but mentally and emotionally I'm very unstable. Like I have really, really good days, and then I have really, really hard days where it's like hard for me to get out of bed, hard for me to just and I say this with like so much compassion. It's not always about healing, because to be honest, I have gotten to a point in my life where I did feel healed. I did feel like I like the hurt wasn't there anymore, the confusion wasn't there anymore, the pain it didn't ache. It was just like I just remembered what happened, and I was able to move forward and process and have a healthy life. But like sometimes I just can't get out of bed, and I just like can't navigate my emotions. I'll feel like really, really high and then feel really, really low, and then I'll be like, it's just weird. I don't really know how to explain it because obviously I'm not a psychiatrist, or I'm not like a doctor. So it's hard for me to put the correct language on it, but I definitely know that being physically unstable as a child and dealing with so many different people and living in so many different households up until the age of like 21, it affected me mentally and emotionally with unstableness. And so I'm going through all these different things. I'm hiding it. I'm not telling anybody. I was definitely one of those kids who knew how to keep a secret. Cause like I grew up in a household where it was like, whatever happens in this household stays in this household. Like we had to be really secretive with the family because when things would like come up, people would make like it would just get really messy, everybody be in your business, and it just wouldn't be like a healthy environment to be open and to share. So my mom had always taught us, just to keep things between us. And like, I will say that my mom created this space. At some point I knew that I could come to my mom. I remember like a few days before my mom had went to jail, she was like praying in the bathroom. And at the time I was like walking into, it was fourth grade. My mom went to jail my fourth grade year. Um, and so I was like, it was like we were wrapping up fourth grade. And a lot of stuff was happening in the family. Like one of my cousins that had just came out that she was like being sexually abused by one of our uncles, and I guess it had been going on for a long period of time. And my mom was like going through her own situations where she was like getting ready to go to jail, getting ready to turn herself in. And she was in the bathroom and she said this prayer that I would never forget. And she was just like, God, you know, remove these situations from me or remove me from these situations. And obviously, the answer prayer was that he removed her. He sentenced her. He let her go to jail. He let her have time to like a couple of years to sit down and kind of just, process and grow outside of the environment that she was so used to. But not only did she say that prayer, but I remember her pulling me into the bathroom while she was saying this prayer. And she was like, I remember this day like it was yes, like you guys, I can vision my mom sitting on the toilet. I can vision her facial expression, everything. And I remember she was just like so open about, has anybody touched you? Anybody touched you? You can tell me, you can be open, this, that, and the third. And that was my opportunity. That was like literally my opportunity, but it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like although she was being open and there was so much I could have told her in that moment, I also just felt like it was pointless because I didn't know that my mom was about to go to jail for a long period of time, but I knew something was different. I knew that we were about to experience a really big change. And I just didn't feel, it was like I knew there was comfort there, and I knew there was love in that room, and I knew that there was support, and I knew that my mom would have believed me in that moment, but I just didn't feel that comfortable to say anything. So I chose not to. And I didn't come out and tell anyone about the abuse with my cousin, with my other like cousins that were not necessarily related to us, but they grew up around us, and the next door neighbor, and like some of the people, who touched me or, molested me as I was growing up. I didn't come out till I was like 16 years old. And I still wasn't comfortable because I didn't sit down and tell anybody. I wrote a book, and no one expected the book to go viral on Wattpad, but it went viral and everybody was reading it, and it was like the talk of the town, and everybody was talking about it. Everybody was talking about it at my school. Everybody was talking about it in the family. My godmom was confused because it's kind of like I tricked her. I was going to her asking her like if you some things happen to you, like she knew I was a writer, and I was a really great writer at the time. I'm still a writer, but I know when I was in 11th grade and I was writing, I was on a whole different level. And I think it was because of everything I was going through, but I was a really good writer at the time, and my godmom was trying to help me process all my emotions because she was the one who was like having to deal with them in real time. When I moved in with my godmom, it was shortly after um my mom had came home from prison. We had, tried to reintegrate as a family, and it just wasn't working. There was a lot of like anger built up. There was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of change. My mom was like completely a different person. Um, and I was already a teenager. And so a lot of the things that I went through while she was gone, I kind of blamed her for. I blamed her being in prison for a lot of the things I experienced because I just felt like she should have been more responsible. I didn't really understand a lot of things at the time, but I just knew like enough was enough. Like I had experienced so much. It's like I had to put the blame on somebody. But living with my godmom, she was the parent. So she had to literally sit there with me and help me. And this is why I like there's one person I love in this world so much. It's my godmother. Like if something happened to my godmother, I don't even know. It would hurt me in ways that I just like cannot imagine. because like the most healthiest relationship I've ever had is with my godmom. And she's just been like, her and my mom have been best friends since they were like ninth grade, probably younger than that. No, way younger than that. They've known each other, I think, since like fifth grade. I meant to say 9 years old, I think. Um, and so not only does she really know me, but she really knows my mom. And she was just like one of those people who stepped into that toxic situation. Like she didn't even have teenagers at the time. Like I was her first teenager. Like I was her first practice, so all her kids were babies. Like they were like, my little sister was like under 5. The other babies were like not walking. So she had to deal with a lot in real time and learning how to help a teenager process their emotions and like, navigate through all of this trauma. And so she realized that like writing was an outlet to me. So I'm like giving her ideas. I'm like hinting that I'm writing this book. And I think she was like the first person that I let read the book. Like, if I'm not mistaken, this happened so many years ago. But she was like one of the first people I think that read the book. I think I sent her the book because like at one point it just went viral. So I'm just like, okay, let me send her this book before she has to find out her own. But anyways, she reads the book. She talks to my mom about it, and it's like this big old thing. And like it's like now my mom knows. And again, it was just like it just became this big thing. And then I remember me and my godmom just having a really bad moment in our relationship and me going to foster care and this thing coming up again, and this time it's like even bigger because now like you have like detectives involved, they're doing investigation. It's come out that I've caught something. That's probably my first time saying that publicly, but it's come out that I've like caught something and I've been living with this thing for a really long time, and no one's like, they're trying to figure out like how could somebody have this for so long and hasn't been cured. So now it's like nobody was taking her to the doctor. It was really traumatic. And I think more than anything, one of the emotions I've always felt is embarrassment. Like, of course there was sadness, of course there was anger, but I think more than anything, it was embarrassment because, again, I was surrounded by so many other teenagers, so many other children who were not experiencing these things. Like, had God blessed me with people who was going through the same thing, I probably would have processed my trauma different. But I think God was showing me that this stuff isn't normal. And I think that's like one of the things that later in life made me feel better because I thought like I could have easily if I had people around me who were going through the same things, I could have easily thought that those actions and those experiences were normal and it was okay, and I could have like justified a lot of my abuse cuz I was, being abused sexually, mentally, emotionally. When my mom went to jail, you have family members who all of a sudden thought they can put their hands on me. My mom was at some point very like physically abusive at times just because of some of the things that she was going through. I got yelled at and talked to crazy a lot as a child to the point where like I thought that was normal. Like hearing my friends' parents talk to them with such like no, hearing my godmom talk to her kids with such kindness and such like so much love, even when they're in trouble, even when they're like doing something wrong, even when she's correcting them and disciplining them, but like talking to them with so much love still at that time like was so crazy to me. It felt like it just felt so weird and so uncomfortable to me because it was something that I had not experienced growing up. And so there was like a lot of abuse that I experienced, and I would feel a lot of embarrassment because I would look at my peers and they were not going through those things. And that's not to say that they weren't going through anything, but they just weren't going through the things that I was going through. And when my friends would find out some of the things that I was experiencing, they would let me know, like, oh, we're not going through that. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but they would let me know, like, that's not normal, that's not okay. Like, what you're going through is crazy. And I know after I wrote my book, and some of my friends started reading it, they realized like, okay, that's why this girl loves school. That's why when she comes to school, like some of them are confused, like, how could you be going through all those things and then you come to school and you're just like this happy person and you're like involved in everything. You're in all these different clubs, you're doing all these different sports, you're like the life of the party, you're dancing at pep rallies, you're rapping, you're doing all these things. Like you just have this big old personality and everybody likes you. Some people don't because obviously they're intimidated by this big personality, but everybody likes you, get along, you're funny, you're pretty, you're always dressing up like, but at home you're going through things that adults go through. Like you're experiencing all these things and you're having to process all these different emotions and all these like you're going to therapy. Like it was so many things that was happening in my life. Like my life was always hectic, there was always chaos, there was always something I had to work on, something I had to work through. And so when my friends kind of realized that, that's when they started to see like, oh, this girl's resilient, she's like really really strong. And I had teachers who seen it and teachers who would cling to me because of it. And so like I cling to school a lot. And this is like where like my love for God and my love for theology came, because school brought out so many of my gifts and talents, because I think being at home hid those things because I was so like isolated at home. Like I remember my godmom used to tell me like, "Hey, when you get home, like what you feel at school is what you should feel here. Like when you get here, you're supposed to like not be so anxious. You're supposed to like take your backpack off and relax and know that you're loved, and you're supposed to be happy, and this is supposed to be like your let your hair down place. Like when we come home to relax, but when you come home with all of this anxiety, all of this baggage, all of this like you it's like it was like the opposite for me. And I would come home with so much anxiety. I would come home like, am I gonna stay here? Am I gonna leave? I'm gonna have to leave. What's gonna happen today? Like, and it also started to create this people pleasing um characteristic, like wanting to people please because I wanted the people that I live with to be happy. I didn't want to upset them because I didn't want to have to leave, and I wanted to finally have a chance to like be comfortable and feel like I had a family and feel loved and stuff. And so I would do a lot of things that like the average person wouldn't do, or I would like try harder. I don't know, it was weird. But home for me was just like a weird place. And school for me wasn't. School for me was like my outlet. It's like I didn't have this mindset when I was younger, like, yeah, like schools, I'm gonna be this like big person. Like I'm gonna my whole story, I'm gonna turn it around, I'm gonna be big, I'm gonna be famous, or I'm gonna be this, I'm gonna be that, I'm gonna be the best. It's like I didn't really have that mindset because I was like created in this unstable environment. So I always live like I don't know what's gonna happen. And I'm telling you guys, that's not a good place to be in life, where you like, yeah, God says like you don't know what tomorrow's gonna bring, and so you shouldn't say, oh, this is gonna happen tomorrow, that's gonna happen tomorrow. But you should say, if it's in God's will, then this will happen. But at the same time, to just like not have any trust, and to like be so anxious that you worry. Like at the same time, God says, do not worry about tomorrow. And I would like worry about the next day so much to the point where I started to have insomnia. And like they had to like prescribe me medicine, and that's when I had to like start going to therapy, because like I would stay up for days because I would fear what the next day would look like. And I would like, if anything happened bad that day, I would harbor on it so much that like it would keep me up at night. And I've brought some of those same characteristics into my adulthood, and it's so hard to navigate when you've been navigating and processing your emotions and some of the things you went through for so long, and like you still don't have it, you're still like still trying to figure it out. But anywho, school is just like one of those big outlets for me, and it's where I realized that I was like a really good writer. It taught me that I can speak very well. I was very eloquent in how I spoke. I was really good at poetry, like really really good. Anything I put my mind to, I was good at it. On top of me just being a 4.0 student, on top of me getting good grades, on top of me like just on top of me being a good, like I was very studious. But then you have these gifts too. Like I'm studious, but I can write really well. And I have like my teacher taking my high school papers to her college and telling them like this is how you should be writing. And I have my teacher calling me when I don't even go to the school anymore to come perform poems because they're so like they're just so good. And then I have like other teachers is my personality alone. It's like it's crazy because my godmom is who really introduced me to God. Okay, I'm not gonna say she introduced me. Okay, yeah. My neighbor when I was younger introduced me to church, but my godmom introduced me to God. And then later in life, when I was like, when I met Noe, I had a friend named Caitlin. Her grandmother introduced me to Jesus. And so it's like, even as I was like being introduced to God and I was going to church and I was praise dancing, I was doing all these things, and I was so good at so many of these things. It's like I knew that didn't come from me. Like I knew it was a gift. Like I knew it was God's. I don't feel like it was God's way of saying, "Hey, because you're going through all this, I'm gonna give you a gift." But it taught me like I'm important. Like I'm still something enough to give a gift to. Like God sees me. He loves me. Like it made me feel like He created me as, in such a way. Like I knew I was unique. I knew I was unique and I knew my story was unique. And so I loved school because it was school that brought that out of me. At home, I would sit in the room. I would like listen to music, watch videos. Like I was very isolated. I would isolate myself. I wouldn't come out the room. I would sleep a lot. And these are things I still do to this day. But like at school, I was like big, bubbly. I was doing these things. And so I used to say I was going to be a teacher at some point. I think when I was younger, I would say I would be a teacher. And then because of like how well I spoke and how well I articulated myself, I said I was going to be a lawyer. Um, but teaching was something that I was always good at in so many different ways. Like whether I was teaching um my friends how to do something, whether I was teaching my little sister how to do something, or whether I was like teaching something that I learned. Like I always felt like it was going to be teaching, but as I got older, I knew it wasn't going to be traditional teaching. Like I knew I wasn't going to be teaching into my classroom. And this is important because this goes into like why I want to do what I want to do today. And it's so important to sober thoughts. But as I got older, I'm leaning towards getting out of high school. I'm still living like I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. Like it was like I was a straight A student. I didn't even know if I was going to college, not because I couldn't afford it or because I didn't want to. It was just something like I didn't like thinking about the next day was always so like it was I just didn't know. Like I was anxious about everything. I didn't know anything. So, I'm processing life. I'm struggling in almost every area of my life, but school. I'm struggling in relationships. I'm struggling with my mom still. Like I'm struggling in all these things. And it's like I'm still trying to like push through and I'm still trying to find my way, but I'm still experiencing trauma and now I'm experiencing it as like a teenager, early adult. And um it was just like life was just becoming more difficult, more difficult. I'm still experiencing homelessness. And I remember when I got my first apartment, so much happened from high school to me getting my first apartment that I probably would have to make this episode 5 parts. But I'll just sum it up and say I did go to college. That within itself was so traumatic. Like I would have to probably do like a whole nother story time. But I did go to college. I'm glad that I went. I wish I would have stayed at the school that I went. That's probably something that I struggle with daily because I think it changed the trajectory of my life. Me and my godmom talk about it all the time because I think it's when I realized how much of a people pleaser I was and how much like how traumatic me and my mom's relationship was to me. Because like I always knew that we had issues, but I think when I went to actually the day before I left and flew off to college is when I knew like, okay, like we have issues. Like this is deep rooted. Like this is something that therapy may not be able to fix. Like this is something that I have to take to God. And in retrospect, like thinking back and then like looking forward, it was God that helped me rectify my relationship with my mom because I literally just had to put it in his hands. Like it was nothing I could do, it was nothing I could say. We tried therapy, we tried everything, like nothing was working. It wasn't until I backed off, put it in his hands and trusted him and started to do things his way when it came to my mom. And ever since then, we've had obviously there's still some issues, but we've definitely had a way more healthy relationship. But anywho, I go to college, some traumatic things happen. Um, I come back. I'm just living life. I'm living in sin. I had this experience where I go to church with my cousin, and at this point, I'm living a very like fast life. Like I don't just mean fast as in like no, I'm talking. I don't mean fast as in like I'm just living and not realizing I'm living. Like no, like I'm talking about breaking in houses. I'm talking about trying to sell drugs. I'm talking about dating Like it was like scamming, stealing. Like I was just living of like I was living outside of the will of God in totality, like 100%. Probably the worst I've lived in my life. And I remember going to church with my cousin and her friend, and we went to Hill City, which I love Hill City because Pastor Dietrich is who actually baptized me 2 years ago. But I went to yeah, I went to Hill City, and um we're in church. And this is also when I started to realize, like, okay, God is real, but he also knows me. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that God knows them personally and he's watching them closely. And so we just keep living. We live and we live and we live. And we may know of God. We may have been to church. We may have said a prayer here and there, but like we don't realize, like, no, God is, girl, he is looking at you. Like he has his eyes on you. He's very watchful when it comes to you. And so I realized that day that God knew me. He knew me by name because like church is over, we're going up, everybody's getting prayed for. And I walk up, like, I mean, everybody's getting prayed for. Usually it's like a few people. No, everybody's getting prayed for. I walk up, my cousin's behind me, her friend's behind me, we all walk up, and Pastor Dietrich's like, stop the music. Stop the music. Everybody be quiet. Don't move. Don't say nothing. He grabbed me by my hand. He said, young lady, I don't know who you are, and I never seen you a day in my life. I don't even know if you've ever been to this church. But God told me to tell you that had you not come in this church today, had you not stood here before me today, he was going to allow the devil to have you. And the devil was plotting to kill you. He wants you bad. Now, let's put a pin in that. When I was like 10, 11, 12. Okay, when I had to process. When I was in the 7th grade, we went to church with my godmom. My godmom's stepdad is a pastor. So we were going to his church. We go to his church again. Church is wrapped up. Everybody's getting prayed for. My mom asks Pastor McKnight, can you pray for us? Can you pray for me, my son, and my daughter? We're all standing there in a circle. He touched my hand. He jumped. He touches my hand and he jumps. And I go, we all go. And he starts, blessing my head, blessing my head, blessing my head. And I'm just like, what's going on? Because this is before I even have an understanding of God. It wasn't until the 9th grade that I even like decided to believe in God. So I'm just like, what is really going on? And then he goes, they're fighting for you. They want you bad, but they're fighting for your soul. The demons and the angels are fighting for your soul. So here we are, 2017. I'm an adult. I'm living this fast life. I know God, but I didn't know God knew me personally. And this pastor who's never met me, never had a conversation with me, never seen me, I've never been to this church, is telling me that there's been a conversation about me. And it reminds me of Job. But there's been like the devil and God had a conversation about me. Like they up there talking about me. And it's something I always remembered. And although I didn't get my life together immediately after that, that is something that always replayed in my head. It's something that I knew was like, I have to have. It started the quest of I need to have a relationship with God. He knows me. I need to know him too. And so, I'm processing life. I'm going on. We jump from 2017 to 2019. I get my first apartment. This is when I really start to cultivate a relationship with God. In between 2017 and 2020, no, in between 2017 and 2019, Noe dies in 2018. But before Noe had died, so we're just going to say 2018 is when Kaylin's grandmother introduced me to Jesus, and she really started to explain and connect the Trinity for me. And I was going to church, and I was like, I was getting to know God. But when I moved into my first apartment, is when I really started to have quiet time with God. I was praying. Is when I started to watch Mike Todd, and that was like Mike Todd at his prime too. He had just came out on YouTube, like going viral. That's when Relationship Goals was coming out, like all these things. And like I just realized, like, for the first time, I sat in my emotions. Like I really sat in my emotions, and I realized like what I'm saying I needed to do today is what I started doing when I got my first apartment. I sat in those emotions and I processed all the things I had been through. And I was the most depressed. I was depressed for days, weeks, maybe even a month. And I remember every day I would watch Mike Todd sermons every single day. And I would cry and I would just be like, God, what's going on? And I would pray. And it was just a lot, but I had sat in that and I had to remember all the things I had went through. And obviously it was the most stable I had been because I had my own place and I didn't have to worry about like, people pleasing anybody to stay there. So it allowed me to really sit in those emotions and all those experiences. And I'm still figuring it out. I'm still going through life. I haven't given my life completely to God yet. I'm still just like, and then I meet my first, like, my girlfriend. She's not my girlfriend anymore. I'm no longer gay or whatever you want to call it. But it was the first girl that I really dated, and we ended up being together for almost 4 or 5 years from this time. But 2020 comes and I meet her. Mind you, I had just sat and processed all of these emotions. I had decided, oh, I didn't say this. I had decided in that time of processing is when I realized that like I had been through so many things and that I can teach on so many of the things I had went through. Because in that time of me sitting in the house every day and just watching Mike Todd's sermons, I was processing and healing a lot of wounds from the time I was a child up until this time. I think I started I was going to therapy, and therapy is what made me decide that I was going to go to life coaching school. And I literally was at work. I had started working with children at this time because this plays a very pivotal moment because now I'm working at the after school program and I'm doing a lot of teaching. But again, I'm not teaching in the way, like in a traditional way. Because it's after school, a lot of the things that I'm teaching these kids is like real life stuff. And literally at the school, I'm like, I go on Google and I start like, I still to this day don't even know how it came upon my heart, but life coaching came upon my heart. And I go on Google and I look up a school and I looked it up and I called the school and I remember the lady telling me like, yeah, it's $11,000. And I'm like, I don't know where I'm gonna get this $11,000. And she calls me back and she's like, well, we have like a payment plan. Like we have this program where you can pay. And as long as you pay before you get your certificate or however it works, you'll be fine. Signed up right away immediately. And so I'm on the road. I'm like, okay, I'm about to get my life coaching license. Like, I'm about to do this, I'm about to do that. But I get in this relationship. And I got so distracted in this relationship because it made me feel seen and it made me feel, remind you though, I have not had any healthy relationships ever in my life. I don't have a healthy relationship with my mom, my dad. I didn't have it like I didn't the only healthy relationship I had was with my godmom, and at some point that relationship became tainted because of the trauma and like because it just became so much, and I had to constantly remind myself like this is not my biological mom. She's doing the best that she can. Actually, I didn't really think about that until I was older. And it's sad to have to think about that, but you have to, like, the reality is these people, like, she had like I hate to say this to myself because the little girl in me should not have to hear this, but I wasn't, and I say this for my godmom and my foster mom because I think they really did try, but they had other kids that were actually biologically theirs. And had it just been me by myself, maybe they could have done it. But because they had obligations to show up as a parent for their other children, it was really hard to just solely focus on me. And I could see how their other kids were starting to be affected by them trying to help me and pour into me so much. Like for my foster mom, her son started to act out because they felt like she was putting so much effort in our relationship, but they just really didn't understand how troubled I was as a child and as a teenager. And I took that really hard. Like it took me a really long time to forgive my foster mom because I felt like she gave up on me. And I felt like I felt like at her house, it's like when I really had a chance. And the same thing with me and my foster mom. The same thing when me and my godmom got into it. I felt like she gave up on me because she was like overwhelmed and frustrated. And one day I think she just realized like this is not my child. And it took me a really long time to forgive her too. Like when I came back home from college, I didn't talk to her for years. And so yeah, that was really hard. Um to process. It's something that I had to come to terms with, but Anyways, I get in this relationship after not having any examples of healthy relationships. And so I clung to this person, like any love, any sense of love, belongingness, and security that this person gave me, I like took it and ran with it. Even if it was a facade, even if it wasn't genuine, even if it was like not supposed to be that deep. Like I took it and I ran with it, and I got so distracted and I started to forget all the things that I had overcome and been through. And I just fell off. I fell off in my relationship with God. I wasn't focused on my goals anymore. I was just like working because I know I had to pay bills. I did start a business and stuff like that, but again, I think a lot of times we do things like sometimes when you're in a relationship, it can cause you to have identity crisis because you start to become a person that God didn't call you to be to show up for that person, if that makes sense. Instead of showing up as who God called you to be and finding somebody who loves you, who loves the version that God called you to be, not the version that they want you to be. And so I think I started doing things, not saying that these things weren't accomplishing and they weren't good, but they weren't me. It's not what God, because if it was me, like God, like I would, like I don't know how to say it, but it just wasn't me. And I was doing things and I was acting in a way that wasn't me because I was trying to, you know, show up in this relationship as the woman she needed me to be. And yeah, it wasn't into 6 months into the relationship, I tried to kill myself. And this is something that out of all the things, still to this day, I say this because out of all of the things that I've gone through in life, rape, molestation, being raped as an adult, being taken advantage of, sex abuse, physical, mentally, emotionally, homelessness, like Noe dying, all of the things that I experienced, never did I feel like I had to kill myself. Now, has there been times, or I'm sorry, I'm saying that and I'm not even thinking about the platforms that this is going to come out on. So, not necessarily, let me change my words. Never did I think of like the S word. Okay. Never did I think about suicide. But I always say this because I've been through some things. You know, like, yeah, I remember when, like, I was like, my mom had first came home from prison and she whipped me. I was like, oh, I'm going to kill myself. But it wasn't something that I, like, wanted to, like, it wasn't something that I actually acted on. And so I got to this point where I did that, and I was in the hospital and I went to the psych ward. And this is something me and my family don't really talk about because it was a very, very difficult pill for my family to swallow. Because I think my mom, my brother, they always knew that I had gone through a lot, I had experienced a lot. And when I became a teenager, it became very evident of all the things that I was like harboring inside and like holding on to and not talking about and not processing. But I don't think they knew to the extent of me wanting to not be here on earth, to like harm myself. And my mom, she was actually more angry than sad. And that affected me too, but as I'm older, I understand her anger. But my family took that really hard. And also they took it hard too because they didn't know what happened. And my mom felt like her and my girlfriend at the time had a cordial enough relationship that she would have at least text my mom and said, hey, something happened to Alex, she's in the hospital. But she literally knew what happened, she was there, she triggered me. I take accountability, I did what I did, but she triggered me. um and she went on when the police rolled, because the last thing I remember is them rolling me out on the stretcher. Like I was already like passing out. Like the pills had already kicked in at that point. They kicked in when I called the police. Not even to mention I had to call the police, call the ambulance on myself. But she didn't believe me when I said like I feel like I'm dying. Anywho, when they rolled me out, the last thing I remember is her looking at me, but she literally like went on like nothing happened. She continued to go party. She continued to post regular. Like none of her posts, it gave nothing. It gave like, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't know what happened. I don't know where she is. And I'm missing. Like my job's trying to figure out where I am. My apartment complex is trying to figure out what I am because they left the door open and unlocked. My family is used to me communicating in some kind of way. Even when I go through like my isolation stages, they're still used to me communicating. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Everybody's trying to figure out where I am, and nothing until probably like a couple of days later I call my mom because I'm able to have a phone call now. And she's like distraught because I didn't experience all this on my own. I'm in the hospital. I died for a little bit. They got to bring me back to life. I'm getting my stomach pumped. All these things happen. Now I'm in a psych ward. They telling me I can't leave until a judge tells me I can leave. They're forcing me to take medication, and I'm not knowing any better. I'm not taking it, which is prolonging me getting out of here. Like, it was just so much. It was a lot. It was like another big traumatic moment. And as I reflect back on that situation, I often think like what I knew she triggered me, but what triggered it? And like what was happening? Like what was going on? And it goes with like what's happening today. I had got so distracted in that relationship that I forgot all the things I had went through. And constantly in that relationship, a lot of my wounds were coming to surface again. Like I was starting to realize like, oh wait, I'm triggered because that actually happened to me when I was little. Oh, I'm acting like this and we're getting into it because this actually happened to me when I was little. Oh, I feel abandoned because I suffered from abandonment issues when I was young. Oh, I'm anxious. Like all of these things were coming to the forefront and I wasn't like I was brushing it off as if these things aren't happening. I'm blaming it happening in real time when really I'm feeling these things and I'm going through these feelings because this is stuff that happened to me when I was a child. So it's deeper than just what you're doing to me in this relationship. You're triggering things that happened to me when I was a kid that I'm forgetting that happened. And so I got overwhelmed and like I just when it all hit the fan, I just was like, okay, I'm gonna exit myself. And that's why like coming on here today and talking about this and saying, hey, I need to like sit down and process what I've been through again because I noticed that when I don't and I act like some of these things never happened to me, and then I'm going about life and I'm having relationships with like friends and family and trying to date and trying to be in relationships and things are coming up and I'm trying to figure out, wait, why am I acting like this or why is this coming up? It's because I haven't stopped and remember like, hey, you need to remind them like, hey, I've been molested as a child. So when you said that or when you did that, that triggered me. Or hey, I have anxious attachment because I was abandoned a lot as a child. I was abandoned by my parents at some point. I was abandoned a lot in different relationships. Like I was always moving around. I had very unstable relationships. So when you treat me like that, when you call me or no, when I call you, you don't answer, or when you just leave and things are unsettled, or when you act like this, like it's because I've been through some things. You know what I'm saying? And it's not to say that you haven't healed because I think people think healing means gone, bye bye, never happened. No. God never said that He was going to heal us and we weren't going to remember that there was a scar to begin with in the first place. And I think we think healing means completely forgetting about the situation and like erasing something that actually happened. And that's not healing because we have scars from things that have happened and we've gone past it. The thing on my foot does not hurt anymore. You can kick it, you can sock it, you can scratch it, you can do anything to it. It doesn't hurt, but it's still there. It still happened. And sometimes I have to acknowledge that it happened when people say, ew, what's that on your foot? Or damn, how did that happen? Excuse my language, but I just had to say damn. I had to emphasize it because that's some of the things people have said. I have to stop and say, you know what? I did fall off a moped because I didn't listen to my foster mom, because I was trying to be a rebellious kid, because I wasn't getting the attention and love that I wanted. So I was trying to get it from outside of the home. I did go through that. Oh, this scar right here, yeah, it girl used to look worse than this. Actually looks way better than what it used to be. We need to still, and then it just stops and it makes you think like, dang, I could have died on that moped last night. God is so good. God uses as a teaching moment instead of a moment of ending my life. You know how many people God just say, you know what, time's up. Go ahead, turn it in, turn it. Come on up. But instead, he used that as a teaching moment for me to not only teach myself and remind myself something, but to teach other people, to teach kids not to be people pleasers, to teach kids that there's a certain type of attention you want, there's a certain type of attention you don't want, to teach people how important it is to listen and to be wise when you make decisions. Like I had to that's the connection I wanted to make today when I got back on here and I started back recording, and I said like I want to start from the beginning because I needed to hear myself say like, girl, you've been through all these things. So just hold on. Just wait, take a pause. You're not hard to love. You're not crazy. You're not you're not wrong for being sober for 1 year, and then your second year it kind of gets rocky and you're craving liquor and all of these things and wanting to drink because some of these childhood triggers are coming up. Like, you're not crazy for that, you're not wrong for that, you're not unlovable. So a lot of times I have to remind myself that, because I think a lot of times as I process through life and I get so far away from my past, and like things come up, I start to feel unlovable. I start to feel like it's impossible for me to be happy. But the reality is, girl, you just been through some stuff. You just been through some stuff. Somebody's going to understand that. And you need to tell people that, because if you don't tell people what you've gone through and what you've overcame, no, it's not about just harboring. I'm not talking about victimizing yourself and using your testimony to manipulate other people, no. But if you want people to really love you, love comes with understanding. Love comes with wisdom. It's wise for me to tell you, like, hey, I get anxious. I have really bad anxiety. So certain things, certain smells, certain food, certain like TV shows, like just certain things trigger my anxiety. Certain actions you might take that you may mean no harm by it, but it's going to trigger me, and I want you to be aware of it. So either A, you know what to do in that moment, or B, even if you don't know what to do, at least you understand what's happening. So you're not thinking like, did I do something wrong or am I crazy? And so, yeah, because I didn't do that, I tried to off myself. So remembering that, going backwards, it's like, okay, I don't want to get to that point. As I'm going through these weeks, and lately, for like the past 3 weeks, throughout this year, I was very anxious, more than I've ever been. I'm talking about like full blown panic attacks. But these past 3 weeks, we're in, what's today? December 20th. I'm recording this December 20th, you guys. Don't know when you're gonna get it. Hopefully you get it today or tomorrow. But as I'm recording this, I'm thinking about the anxiety I felt the past 3 weeks, and how like it's been so unfair, because the people that have been experiencing this side of me, they're unsure what's happening. And it's because I haven't been doing my job of showing up authentically as myself. I have tried to create this secondary identity who's like, I've been through stuff, but so what? I'm here now. This is who I am. Nobody cares about what I've been through. It's time to move on. It's time to get to the bag. It's time to do this. It's time to do that. And that may work for a lot of people, but that's not who God called me to be. My story is my purpose. That is not for everybody. Your purpose may, like, you may not be like, I think God can use your testimony in any kind of way, but like, when I say my story is my purpose, I'm saying like me speaking, saying my story, sharing it, me having this podcast, me wanting to be a theologian, me wanting to stand up in front of millions of people on a stage and share my story in a way that teaches them and brings them closer to God. That is my purpose. That is my gift. That is what God called me to. That is my mission as a disciple. That's what He called me to. That's how I'm going to make disciples. So when I am living outside of my calling, I'm not doing justice for myself nor for the people that God has called to my life. And I will mess up a lot of relationships living outside of my calling. You will mess up a lot of relationships living outside of your calling, because you'll create this unnecessary toxicity because you are not showing up as who God called you to be, and God cannot bless who you pretend to be. And so as I've been processing this week, it's like, okay, why is this not working? Why is this like, why am I like having so much conflict with this person? And it's like, it's me. It's because I'm not living in my authenticity. I have to share some of these things. Like, they need to know what I've been through. They need to know what I'm going through, so that they can not only help me, but it's helpful for them. So they don't think they're crazy, or they're not facing the backlash of me blowing up and then eventually doing something that's going to be hard to turn back from. Like when I attempted suicide, that was really hard in my like, even though we got back together after that and we like, decided to stay with each other for 3 more years, it was really hard to look at that person the same or even look at that person in any type of good lighting. And she was looking at me like I was crazy. So it's like, I don't want to keep doing things. I don't want to keep not living in my authenticity and it's ruining parts of my life. Like, I have to live the life that God has called me to be. And I struggled this year with that. I struggled so much this year with that. And so many more things happened after that suicide attempt that I could talk about. But that was a really pivotal moment. And I had to bring us to that moment because that's when I realized like that connects so much with my story and why it's so important for me to share my story so I don't like overload or forget. Um, but even then, like all the things that happened after that, it was me going back into like a flow state. Like I became a life coach, so I was still sharing my story. I was writing, I created my journal. Like I did a lot of things after that, a lot of accomplishing things. But I think in that time, the most important thing for me was to build a relationship with God. And it took me a long time to really, like I said, God knew me, but I needed to get to know him. And so it didn't matter about me becoming a life coach. It didn't matter that I was able to still progress in life and get a new job and get a new house, get a new car. None of that mattered because I wasn't getting to know God. And that's when I needed to the most. But fast forward to this point in my life, I'm sitting here this year, and like I said, I had a great start to this year. And sober thoughts, the beginning of this year and the end of last year, sober thoughts meant so much to me. It meant so much to me. It made me feel so good that I was sober. It made me feel so good that I started this podcast and I got to talk about my journey, talked about why I wanted to be sober, talked about why it's important to be sober minded, so many things. But again, I got lost. I started to forget why I became sober. I started to like push my why to the back as a back burner. And I started to just try to push through life. And one of the things I learned during the season was that being sober is so much more than not drinking and smoking. If this year did not teach me anything else, it taught me that. Like being sober is so much more than not drinking and smoking. God calls us to be sober to set our mind on things above. And so many times this year, last year was a breeze. Like it was so easy for me to get through last year. Sober, I was just like whoopie doo, we're doing it. I'm not doing it. I had no cravings. But I was also really focused on God last year, and I was also like, I was really focused. I was planning this podcast. I was like prepping for it. I was filming. I was doing a lot of things that kept me cultivated in my sobriety. And I think this year when I fell off, it was God's way of showing me like, I know you're not drinking and smoking, but your mind and your heart is still so intoxicated. And what I'm calling you to is so much like you want to be intoxicated because you're not even, it's like you're distracted from what I'm calling you to, so it's easy for you to intoxicate your mind and your heart during this time. And I know that's a mouthful and I don't know if that makes sense, but it was like I just distracted myself with so many things and I fell off track. And it made me realize how intoxicated it made me realize how sober I still wasn't. Like it's like I'm still not sober. Like I'm still battling. Like I have drunkenness in my mind, drunkenness in my heart, drunkenness in my soul. I'm intoxicated with the sinful nature. And it's like my desire is to not be pure. My desire, like I don't put my thoughts were not on things above. And as we walk into this new season of sober thoughts, I really want to really, really, I really want, if we don't learn anything else, I want us to really learn what it means to be sober, spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally. Um, I did start school this year. I signed up for Biola University. By the grace of God, I was accepted. I decided to study theology because I want to teach theology in so many different ways. I want to write books. I want to do this podcast. I want to go on tours, on stage, and preach. I want to be a pastor. I want to do so many things. I want to be an apostle. I want to do so many things. I'm still learning like how I want to hone it down. But I know that theology is my calling. Sharing my story through theology is my calling. And I want to do that. And so I signed up for school. I got accepted by the grace of God. My first semester, it was on conditions because of my unstableness with school. um, and I was able to pass the first semester with an A and a B. It was amazing. Classes were good. I've been learning so much about the Bible and just how to effectively read the Bible and study the Bible. I just completed my second semester. I didn't do as good as I did my first semester. In fact, I did horrible. But again, it has so much to do with like being distracted. Like I just have to take accountability. I was so distracted. I was losing sight of even going to school. Um, and I know next semester is going to be so much better. But this semester wasn't the best. But in between the time, I'm going to be doing a lot of fasting and studying because I have like a week or two off before school starts the next semester for spring. I've already picked my classes, and like I said, this is so important going to school for theology because I think one of the biggest things about um Christian influencers today is like I think everybody's biblically illiterate. And I say everybody because there's so many, but I know it's not everybody. But there's so many. Well, to me, there are people who are on these platforms that may come off as Christian influencers, but they're not Christian influencers. They're actually real life like teachers, apostles, and pastors who really care about God, who God has really called to do this thing, and they're walking it out, and they're literally helping and discipling so many people. But then you have the Christian influencers who get on here who want to portray a Christian lifestyle, but they're not really living it because they really don't know how to read the Bible. And I didn't want to be that person. Like you can only talk about your story so much. What else are you going to tell me about my God? And how are you going to help me understand my God? And how are you going to help me get to know God and understand that he wants to get to know like how are you going to really help me? Like what does the Bible really say about my soul? And I think we've gotten so far away from that. So I wanted to be able to cultivate sobriety with theology because I think a part of having a sober mind is being biblical literate. Like you need to be biblically literate to have a sober mind. When God says put your mind on things above, he's talking about the word. And if you don't understand the word, how are you going to put your mind on it? How you gonna focus on it? How you gonna hone in on it if you don't understand it? And so like this second season of Sober Thoughts, it's gonna really it's gonna really map out what the seasons to come is gonna look like. This season is gonna really set the tone for what it means to be sober and what my sober thoughts are. And I'm so excited to be able to come on here and say that although I had a really difficult year and I'm having a really difficult night and I'm having a really difficult week, I'm probably gonna have one of the hardest holidays this year because you guys know Christmas is next week and Noe's anniversary is coming up, and it's a lot. I'm probably gonna have a difficult week, but if nobody takes anything from this, I know like God wants me here. My story is so significant, and there's so much more I could have opened up and shared, and I promise to do that in a way as we move along throughout these episodes. But like I said, I just really want this season to really capture what it means to be sober in its fullness, not just the importance of being sober minded when it comes to alcohol and drugs, but more than that. Like, what does it mean to be sober? What does it mean to set your mind on things above? What does it mean to what does it mean to have self-discipline in your mind? What does it mean to be clear-headed? What does it mean to be level-headed? What does it mean to think with love? Like all of these things that I want to like touch on and talk about. And I want to talk about relationships. And I want to talk about purity. I want to talk about it's so many things I'm talking about. It's so many things that I've already talked about, but I didn't talk about it till it at its like I didn't talk about it at its fullest capacity, nor did I have the knowledge that I know today when it comes to the Bible. And so I'm really, really excited. And I'm just so thankful. I thank all of you for listening. I'm so excited to be back. Can't wait to be dropping so much more. I want to pray us out because I don't know, my spirit just called me to pray in this moment. I've been struggling to pray, so this is important. Dear Heavenly Father, Holy Spirit, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be able to process my thoughts on such a level that I can share them and be authentically myself. Thank you for calling me to walk in the Spirit, to obey your calling. And thank you for this moment of clarity. Lord, I pray that anyone who is watching this opens their heart not only up to you, but up to the idea of being sober. Being sober minded is so important. And setting your mind on things above each and every day can bring you so much joy, so much peace, and so many fruits of the Spirit that one cannot even imagine. And I really hope that whoever is listening to this is called to walk in sobriety. They've been called to step out of their sinful nature and turn back to you. Whatever sin they may be struggling with, Lord, I pray that you send the Spirit right now in this moment to help them like you did with me. It was a regular night. I didn't know what was coming. And you sent the Spirit and told me that I was going to be sober and that I was going to walk in sobriety and that my life was going to be different. And that if I just trusted the Spirit will lead me and the rest will be history. And that is literally what I'm walking in today. And I pray that that hits someone right now and that I pray that this prayer reaches them and that that is what their life is going to look like as the new year approaches. Lord, I pray that any ears that heard this podcast today, I pray health over them. I pray joy over them. I pray peace over them and understanding above all things. I pray that you give them the ears to understand and the heart to receive. And in Jesus' name, Lord, I just want you to know that we love you. And I want you to know that we trust you in all your ways. And that your ways are bigger than ours. And your ways are higher than ours. And even when it doesn't make sense, even when we're confused, even when we forget, you're there to remind us that you will never forsaken us. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. That's what I had in my heart. I could have went on and on and on, but I'm cut it short. I'm gonna take some time to pray on my alone time, but I'm so happy to be back. Sober Thoughts is back. Like we're here to stay. I'm so thankful. Like despite everything that I experienced this year, I'm so thankful and I'm so grateful. And I hope that this podcast really sits with you well. With that being said, these are my sober thoughts. Until next time.